You all know that I love Gordon Ramsay. And I think we can agree that beef Wellington is one of the most delicious things on planet Earth while simultaneously being very time-consuming. But what if we turn a sub 24-hour process into this? We're gonna use real techniques, fermentation, aging, to see if we can create not only the greatest beef Wellington, but to see if it's better than its original counterpart. And if you've seen our 350-hour pizza, we're gonna calculate the time differently here, okay? We're gonna be more fair, we're not gonna add the times together. So this one's gonna be even harder. If I'm gonna put in all this time, then I need something that can stand the test of time. And also happens to be today's sponsor, Made in Cookware. I've been using their pots and pans long before this sponsorship. I love them. But why do I love these pans so much? They're pro-level products, handcrafted in Italy, but made for home cooks. Because of my chef background, I'm insanely picky when it comes to the performance of my pans. That's why I fell in love with Made in long before this sponsorship. Their pans are used in over 3,000 restaurants, including multiple 3 Michelin star restaurants. They have beautiful heat retention that gets you a nice even cook, thanks to their 5-ply stainless steel material. But these handles stay cool and balanced thanks to their ergonomic design. I just learned what ergonomic means. Since these can withstand the demands of a pro kitchen, you can imagine they're gonna work quite well for you. So check out the stainless collection and Made In's other cookware by clicking the link in the description to save on your order. Now back to the video. Before we start, I want to clarify we did not get 330 hours by adding together all the times here because, well, I know how the comments felt. So we're not messing around here. This is 330 hours starting from the top of the most time-consuming item. Now, if we did add all of our times together, it would be a total of nearly 700 hours. I do want to note something really quick. You know, the takeaway isn't just to be like, wow, let's watch Josh make this ridiculously long thing. But also that's fun too. Honestly, I'm excited to see how this turns out, and I'm sure you are too. But the goal here is that we, or maybe just you, find something cool out of this, just an element that you could take home with you and make just by itself or apply the technique elsewhere. That's the beauty of this. Plus, it's a very much of a greater than the sum of its parts thing. But anyway, first thing is our least time-consuming item, sourdough crepes. First, you're gonna need a strong sourdough starter, which you'll need to have given a full feeding and let it ferment at room temperature until fully mature, about 24 hours. Now, making the batter, get a large bowl, add 3/4 of a cup or 90 grams of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon or 4 grams of fine sea salt. Whisk together, then whisk in half a cup or 140 grams of your mature sourdough starter. 2 whole eggs and 1 egg yolk, 1 cup or 240 milliliters of whole milk. Whisk together until homogeneous, then pass through a fine mesh strainer, such as a chinois. And, well, it could be done here, but if you want it to be green, gosh, why would I want it to be green? To be honest, I think it's just a marker of looking cooler and a bit more soigné, as we say. If you do want that, pop it into a blender with a couple handfuls of spinach, blend on high until completely smooth and, well, green. Pass through a fine mesh strainer. Now to cook these crepes, you'll get a 10-inch nonstick pan, lightly grease, set over medium heat, and once it's hot, pour in 4 to 6 tablespoons of your batter, swirl it around to create a nice thin single layer. Cook until completely set, about 45 seconds, flip and cook for 30 more seconds. That's it. Just repeat with the rest. I'll be honest, you're gonna have some messed up ones. That usually happens with the first. Yeah, there it is. Now let's up the ante. Puff pastry. Yes, we're making it from scratch. Store-bought versus homemade. Is it worth it? We're gonna find that out today as well. Funny enough, it's only 4 ingredients. Start with 1 cup plus 2 tablespoons or 227 grams of unsalted cold butter. Cubed, place it on a work surface, lightly dust it, and bait that thing up with a rolling pin, give it a little fold, and repeat that process until you have a cohesive piece of butter that doesn't break easily. Get yourself some wax paper. Now wrap that wax paper around the butter, encasing it in a large square. Roll the butter out to each corner of your square until you get a 4x4 inch square of butter. Look, this just helps make it into the shape of a square. You don't have to use the wax paper. Pop that in the fridge and then make your dough. Big boy bowl. 2.5 cups or 320 grams of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon or 7 grams of fine sea salt. Stir together, then add 3/4 of a cup or 177 grams of cold water. Mix by hand, and as soon as the dough pulls from the sides of the bowl, knead on a work surface until you get a smooth dough. About 2 to 3 minutes. Remember that there butter back in the day? Like a few seconds ago? You're gonna do the exact same thing with your wax paper. You're gonna roll that dough out into a 7x7 inch square wrapped in your wax paper case. Pop that in the fridge and rest with the butter for 1 hour. Once the time's up, pop your dough onto the counter, lightly flour it, add your butter square in the center with the edges of the butter facing the opposite way of the edges of the dough. See, kind of like this. Does that make sense? Fold each corner of the dough over the butter to form a kind of a closed envelope. Seal all the edges completely, then carefully roll it into a 12x7 inch long rectangle. Then letter fold that by placing one side to the middle and then the other side to overlap evenly. Wrap that in plastic wrap and place in the fridge for 45 minutes. Now take it out. Do the exact same thing. Roll it out, 12x7 inch long rectangle. Letter fold, wrap in plastic wrap, and back into the fridge. This time let it rest in the fridge for 1 day or 24 hours. Good night, my sweet prince. Next day, pull it out and rest it on the counter for 30 minutes, to remove the chill. Then roll it out one more time to a 12 by 7 inch rectangle. Let her fold one last time. Wrap it in plastic wrap and refrigerate for 2 more hours. Yeah, I know, it's a lot. You're probably like, what the hell, man? Hey, there's a reason why people don't make puff pastry. We're here to do it for you. At this point, your puff pastry is ready to pull out and roll immediately for a Wellington, but it can keep in the fridge for 2 to 3 days. At around a 30-hour dough. Now let's up the ante a little bit. You know that little mushroom paste that usually goes in the beef Wellingtons? The duxelle. This is probably the longest time anyone has ever taken to make one in the world, at least that I can think of. Now, to a large 4 to 6 quart container, either glass or plastic, pour in just enough water that would submerge 1 pound of cremini mushrooms. Once you have that water, weigh the water out in grams. Multiply that weight by 0.020. That'll get you a 2% salt brine, the gram amount that you get when you do your little math equation. It's not that hard. Not only do I hate math, I did not go to college and I can figure it out, okay? So if you have 1,500 grams of water, it would be 30 grams of kosher salt, which is enough for this recipe. And whisk your salt into your water till dissolved. Destem and clean 1 pounder, 450 grams of cremini mushrooms. Pop your mushrooms into your salt brine. Make sure the liquid will fully submerge your shrooms. Now find something plastic or glass, such as a plastic rack like this, or some small glass bowls, to weigh the mushrooms down and keep them submerged in the water. Now cover it with cheesecloth, tie it with twine so the cheesecloth doesn't, fly away. Let that sit at room temperature for 3 days. Listen up, always label your ferments. We like safety here. Once those are done fermenting, remove your mushrooms, rough chop them, place them in a food processor, chop finely, almost into a paste. Heat a medium pan over medium heat, add 2 tablespoons or 28 grams of unsalted butter. Once melted and boom. Add 2 finely diced shallots, hit lightly with salt and saute for 1 minute, then add 3 tablespoons or 48 grams of whiskey, increase the heat to medium high, and boil that until almost all the liquid is gone. Then add your processed mushrooms, season very lightly with salt. Remember, these were brined earlier, okay? We don't want to oversalt this. Followed by 2 sprigs of thyme and 1 sprig of rosemary. Continuously cook and stir until the majority of the water has been cooked out and your duxelle looks like this, about 15 minutes. Then stir in 3 cloves of finely chopped garlic, and that finishes off with a 72-hour duxelle. Now, here's a weird twist for the beef Wellington. I don't know that anyone has ever done this before. I'm gonna also wrap this in a sheet of 72-hour cooked short rib, the whole muscle meat. We're not gonna chop it up. It's gonna be an actual sheet. First, you need 1 pound or 450 gram boneless short rib. Freeze that bad boy until extremely firm, but maybe not a rock. Slice it about 1/3 or 1/2 inch thick using a sharp knife or ideally a deli meat slicer. Josh, I don't have a deli meat. Then use a knife, dude. It's okay. Once those are sliced, season both sides lightly with salt and pepper. Don't get all crazy over here with seasonings. I know what you're thinking. Oh, I season my meat, Papa. That's great that you do, but we got a lot of other things going on in here. So pop that into a vacuum bag, vacuum seal, and place in a sous vide set to 69 Celsius. Nice. For 72 hours. Frankly, you could probably go for less time because these are so thin, but I wanted to test it out, so we're pulling the full 72. Now take it out and set in the fridge left in the bag. Now we're progressing our time dedication with a fermented Dijon-inspired mustard. Yeah, this is the longest timed item in the recipe so far. Get yourself 1/2 cup or 100 grams of yellow mustard seeds, lightly crush a few of them in a mortar pestle. Then in a quart-sized mason jar, add exactly 6 grams of salt and 300 grams of water. Yes, again, we're using exact measurements because fermentation can kill you if you don't do it right. So please be safe and discuss with your doctor and make sure that you do your appropriate research on lactofermentation and the scientific resultants of said lactofermentation. Stir until your salt's dissolved, add your mustard seeds, 1 small finely chopped shallot, 1 finely chopped clove of garlic, make sure all the sides are clean, cover that with cheesecloth and tie with a rubber band or kitchen twine. Again, label your ferment and let that sit at room temperature for 5 days. So now, even without doing all these other things that we've done so far, we're sitting at 120 hours. Once your mustard is done, pop all of that into a blender and blend on high until you get a paste. Add a 1/4 cup or 60 milliliters of apple cider vinegar. Yep, that's right, that kills the ferment, but it's gonna add a little bit of extra acidity, but that doesn't delete all the funk that we just developed in our ferment. A splash of Worcestershire sauce and 2 cloves of fresh garlic, all while blending. Season to taste with salt and blend until as smooth as possible. Optionally, you could pass your mustard through a fine mesh strainer to get it extra nice and glossy. And well, at this point, we pretty much have our components. How could we possibly bump this up more than that ridiculous 120-hour marker? What item could possibly take it there? All we have left is a piece of meat. Well, I got a way, pal. You're first gonna get a whole tenderloin. Yeah, the whole thing. So you're gonna take that puppy and you're gonna place it in a dry ager for 14 days. This is a relatively small primal, so it's hard to dry age this for too long. You pull it out, you trim off the dried out, oxidized outside, and you cut out the most perfect 2 pound, 907 gram center cut of the tenderloin, the filet. And that is your beef standing at a 330 136-hour timeline. Wow. Now, I guess you could just go get a center cut tenderloin from the store, but it ain't this, I'll tell you that. Finally, we can assemble this monstrosity. First, make sure your short rib is warm in its bag before you add it so it's flexible, otherwise it'll break apart. First, get your roast. Optionally, you can tie it off with kitchen twine at 3 intervals to keep it even. Season it with salt and pepper generously on all sides and sear it on all sides in a ripping hot pan. Once it's done, immediately brush it with your fermented mustard. Let that cool in the fridge for a few minutes. Pull out your homemade puff pastry. Let that sit at room temp while your beef cools. Let's call it 10-15 minutes. Layer in 4 crepes shingled to create one large sheet. In the center of that, shingle on prosciutto to coat the majority of the crepes. Then spread on your 72-hour duxelle in an even layer. Think about making a square that will perfectly wrap around your beef. That's how you can organize this. Then carefully create a single sheet of short rib by gently laying on your slices of 72-hour short rib side by side. My goodness. Now, before we put our beef on there, make sure to remove your twine. And finally, your seared, dry-aged filet de boeuf, placed daintily at the lower third. Roll it up gently in plastic wrap. Make sure it's wrapped nice and tight. Once it's sealed, hold both ends and roll against the counter to tighten into a thick sausage. Then roll out your puff pastry. Carefully roll that bad boy up in your puff pastry, adding a bit of water or egg wash at the bottom to help seal. This egg wash consists of 2 egg yolks and a splash of water whisked together. That's quite it. Wrap that up nice and tight in plastic wrap, rolling it on your board to create a doit sausage. Then chill in the fridge for 15 minutes. Finally, we can bake. Place your Wellington on a parchment-lined baking sheet. Brush generously with your egg wash, and optionally you can add a little lattice top to it. This is just excess puff pastry that was rolled out and cut with a lattice cutter. If you do place it on, you will need to brush it again with egg wash. And to finish this off, in between each lattice, I added a little piece of fresh thyme to commemorate how much time this took. Get it? Sorry. Honestly, placing the thyme leaves was borderline worse than making the Wellington overall. And next to that, I have my recipe for a regular Wellington. That's for the comparison. These are both my recipes, regular here and extreme version here. Bake at 475 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 to 30 minutes. It may take longer depending on how thick, until you reach an internal temperature of 133 Fahrenheit. Pull it out and rest for 5 minutes before slicing. I'm not gonna lie, I ended up pulling it out at 136. Not great. Let's hope this isn't overcooked. So a quick cross section, and good Lord, have mercy on my soul. Despite the fact that it is maybe slightly overcooked, for me at least, the inside of this undoubtedly looks like a 330-hour labor of love. Surely this was worth it. But hey, there's only one way to find out. This is a beautiful Wellington. It's a little overdone, I'll give you that. First off, visually, I mean, look at this thing. The green around there, and you can literally see the intramuscular structure of that sous vide short rib. First, we'll start with the original. It doesn't look as exciting, I'm not gonna lie. Look, we know what this tastes like. The prosciutto spanking you around, salty umami, when you have that buttery crunch around it. Whoa, there's a lot going on in there. There are a lot of similarities. This tenderloin, luscious, way more tender. But then that mushroom duxelle comes in. It's funky, it's rich. Now, the rest of the ingredients are the same. Is that enough to push it through? I don't think so. But you know what is? It being enrobed in a 72-hour short rib that you can feel biting through, juicing. So is this better? By leaps. Is it worth it? No, it's not. It is significantly better, and I do not ever want to do that again. But you can always learn something here, and you can use any of these single components in anything else. Pick something out of this that you think is the coolest and put it in another Wellington or something else and have a beautiful fucking day. But hey, thank you to Made In for sponsoring today's video, and don't forget to check out their stainless collection and Made In's other cookware by clicking the link in the description to save on your order. Don't forget to subscribe also. Bye!